talk about in three ways this morning. First of all, they're an evidence of deep connection to God. Good relationships are not an accident, as you well know. When God influences our lives through a deep connection with Him, it shows up in our relationships. Second of all, it builds a credible reputation among people. It is when you make an effort through the influence of God upon your life, people recognize that about you. They identify that as being true of you. And then lastly, as time permits, we'll talk about the fact that that leads to creating a powerful team of people. And I want to call that this morning the church. And how God's power flows through a group of people to influence the world in which we live. So I'm going to be somewhat bold this morning and say this, that the most important thing to note, the most important thing to note about good personal relationships is that it is evidence of a personal connection with God. So if you would travel with me a little bit this morning, I just want to show you a couple of passages of scriptures. John chapter 8, first of all, if you would go there. John chapter 8. I have a personal conviction about some of the important matters of the life of faith. I'm sure you would agree with me. The best place that you can turn to learn about these things is to the life of Jesus. The way He lived and what we're talking about this morning, about our relationships, Jesus was a master. It is a wonder to stand back and watch the way that He interacted with people. If you were to look over the previous chapters leading up to John chapter 8, you would see that Jesus had gone with His disciples to Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, He presented Himself in a public way. He went to the places of worship and He began to speak about this life of faith and began to reveal Himself as a person. I love John chapter 7, verse 46. The temple guards said, "No one ever spoke the way that this man does." And so it was already a wonder of who this person was. This person, Jesus. And then in verse 18, He says this in His own words. It said, "I am the one who testifies for myself," because the religious establishment was now looking at Jesus and saying, "Who is this? And why should we listen to Him? Where is His, who are giving us His credentials? Where does He come from? What right does He have to speak to us?" And so Jesus begins to try to answer those questions. "I am the one who testifies for myself. My other witness is the Father who sent me." What is Jesus saying? Jesus is saying that as you watch me interact and as you begin to watch me express the power of God, realize that yes, my life speaks for itself, but the influence of God the Father through me also is a sign of where my words and where my actions come from. We see the discord continue, and then we drop down to verse 28, and it says this in verse 28 and 29. "So Jesus said," He speaks again, "When you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am He, and that I do nothing on my own, but speak just what the Father has taught me. The one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do what pleases Him." So what has Jesus said so far? He said, first of all, examine my life, listen to my words, and then there's going to come a day when my life is going to be taken from me. He will give Himself to die on a cross. But He will not stay dead. I will rise from the dead. Jesus is saying, my life and my death will be a representation of the power of God flowing through me. And then down in verse 54, He says this. Jesus replied, He speaks once again, "If I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. My Father, whom you claim as your God, is the one who glorifies me. Though you do not know Him, I know Him. If I said I did not, I would be a liar like you, but I do know Him and obey His word." Here's the point that I want to make. is that Jesus' influence on the people of his day, the people of his relationships. And I know that we need to kind of back up, and it's hard to wrestle through this. Jesus was God, he was perfect. But he was human as well. And so in his relationships where people say, we have never heard anyone speak like this. We have never seen anyone live like this. Yes, he was God. But Jesus claims that the power of his life came through the connection he had with God the Father. The quality of his relationship with his Father was the power that made him live the kind of life that he did. So I'm going to make this claim. I hope that you agree. God alone possesses the power to produce change. If you go to a bookstore, you can go to entire sections in Barnes & Noble of books that will help you live well. I guess to some degree they might be helpful. But I'm going to make the claim this morning that if you're going to experience good relationships in your life, that the power from which that comes is the power of God working on the inside of your life. So I'll tell you one more thing about myself. Paul and I live on a farm of sorts. There's 18 acres of land. We have right now 6 sheep, 4 cows, and 100 and some odd chickens or so. So recently, this is quite a, big deal for me. We got a tractor. I farmed for a long time without a tractor. It was so a number of years ago, I worked with a construction company and I drove a backhoe. And one day I made a very bad mistake. You guys that are familiar with this are going to laugh at me, and that's okay. I put gasoline in this diesel backhoe. It was not a day for me. So one thing I have never done and will never do with my tractor, it runs on diesel. I will never put gasoline because it'll mess it up. Seriously. That tractor is designed to run on diesel. We are intended to live this life of faith through a deep connection with God, through a personal relationship, through Jesus Christ. You can go out all kinds of other ways, but it was not intended to be lived other than your connection in a personal way with God. That deep connection with God results in the transformation of our nature in our character. So if you can kind of visualize this a little bit, I guess, I don't know if any of you have ever been in an assistant principal's office, but there's usually a desk and there's chairs on the other side of it. Mine's no different. It's set up the same way. And so students are sent to me, and they come and they sit in the chair. And invariably, 99% of the time, this is how it goes. Especially for those students who visit me more than once. I'll invariably ask them to do this. You need to figure out why you're doing this. You need to ask yourself, why did you say that? I'm not trying to sort out the event, the incident itself. I want you to sit and think, why did you say that?